Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this session of our Islam Study Circle. We begin our session by discussing a Quranic verse. In fact, these are a couple of verses, and the title that I have given them is Forgiving Others. So these verses read as وَجَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ سَيِّئَةٌ مِثْلُهَا فَمَنْ عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ وَلَمَنِ انْتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ظُلْمِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَا عَلَيْهِم مِّن سَبِيلٍ إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسَ وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. And the revenge of an evil is an equal to it. Yet he forgave and reconciled, his reward rests with God. Indeed, he does not like wrongdoers. And those who took revenge after they were oppressed, then there is no blame on them. The blame is only on them who oppress people and are rebellious in the land without justification. It is for these people for whom there is a grievous penalty. And indeed, he who exercised restraint and forgave, then this is from among the matters of resolve. Because this is a very fundamental theme which is discussed at many places in the Quran, and that is when we lead a life, when we live amongst our peers and contemporaries, there are always instances in which we feel that we have been dealt with wrongly. We have been dealt with unjustly. We have been oppressed. People have done things which are not good, and hence we do feel that we need to be compensated. It is to compensate and to quench this feeling that the Almighty has allowed us, that if we have been wronged, then we can seek an equal wrong against the person who has wronged us. However, the appeal here, which is very evident from these verses, is that if a person forgives, فَمَنْ عَفَا وَأَصْلَحَ فَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ, a person who forgave and he reconciled and he actually mended the affairs, then وَأَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ, so his reward rests with God, which of course is a very, very motivating appeal, that if we forego revenge, if we forego any retaliation, then it is God who is going to take care of us, especially with regard to the reward and a lot of good things that He has promised in the hereafter, and who knows in this world as well. So the basic theme of these verses is that seeking revenge is something, or taking revenge is something which is not at all unjustified, because of the fact that we are people who have been wronged. But remember, there are always two levels in every undertaking in religion. One is to behave or retaliate in equal coins, and the other is that we are actually telling ourselves that this is something which can happen from us as well. So let's be more gracious, and for the sake of God, let us forgive that person for the wrong that he has committed. So again, the verse says, وَلَمَنْ انْتَصَرَ بَعْدَ ظُلْمِهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَا عَلَيْهِم مِّن سَبِيلٍ. And those who took revenge after they were oppressed, and there is no blame on them. Of course, which means that if they have done something of the sort that they have retaliated, then there is no revenge, there is no blame on them. And the verse goes on to say, إِنَّمَا السَّبِيلُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ يَظْلِمُونَ النَّاسَ. The blame is only on those people who oppress other people and are rebellious in the land without any justification. وَيَبْغُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. So the verse has its own proclivity towards the fact that people who oppress other people, people who are unjust to other people, they are the ones who are to be blamed, not the ones who retaliate. But again, the verse ends with these beautiful, motivating and inspirational words, وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ لَمِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. That, and indeed, he who exercised patience or restraint and forgave, then this is from among the matters of resolve, which of course tells us and inspires us and motivates us that if we can take up this and we can forgive the other person, then it can really be a very, very telling situation on the other person, because when we forgive someone, the other person also has a heart. He also or she also melts down, and the other person also thinks, if the conscience in them is vibrant and alive, that something has been done very wrongly. And instead of the fact that I faced the wrath of the other person, I was forgiven by him or her. So this soothes the other person. This actually at times is instrumental in bringing him out of his evil ways. And of course, when a person does this, he or she forgives for the sake of God. It also is something which he or she is doing merely to please God, and this is something which is really contributing towards his or her own self-purification, and also reminding the person that if the other person inflicts, if the person himself or herself inflicts something bad on some other people and expects that he or she be forgiven, then the best way is to also forgive others when they wrong you. So it's like something that goes as a symbiotic relationship and a reciprocating relationship. So forgiving others, especially when the fault is not theirs, especially when they have done something out of ignorance maybe, or out of without realizing what they are doing wrong. And at times there is also a difference of opinion whether a person has done wrong or not, because the other person might be thinking that he has not done something wrong. So there are many instances in which we need to actually control our reaction, because the immediate reaction when we are wronged is that we would like something to happen from our own selves. We would like to retaliate. And it is here that the Quran says that we have to take stock of our own selves, stop for a moment and see if things can be just forgiven and forgone, and as a result the matter is can be resolved immediately. But if not, the Quran has permitted us to take equal revenge, and if that revenge is taken in a way that one does an equal amount of harm to the other person, then this of course will not be taken to account in any way by the Almighty. Let us now move on to the next part of our study circle, and this is the hadith of the day, and this is something which is related to kindness to parents, and this has been reported by Imam Muslim bin Hajjaj, who is actually the of course the compiler of the of one of the Sahihain of hadith, this Al-Jami al-Sahih of Imam Muslim. So the words are, An Abi Hurayrata qala qala rajulun ya Rasulullah man ahaqqu an-nasa bi husni as-suhba qala ummuk thumma ummuk thumma ummuk thumma abuk thumma adnaka adnaka. Abu Huraira said, a person asked, O Messenger of God, who amongst people is the most deserving of my good treatment? He replied, your mother, then your mother, then your mother, then your father, then your nearest relatives according to their order of nearness. So again, you can see here that what we have been told is that one of the greatest rights which a person has is of his parents. And this is something which is mentioned in the Quran so many times, that after the right of God, the greatest right someone has is that of the parent. And amongst the parents, the mother occupies special importance, and she, according to this narrative, has thrice the right of the father. And this is also understandable. After all, she bears the child in her belly, and then she gives birth to her. She has to go through this tremendous painful process, and then she also breastfeeds that child. So you can clearly see that these three stages are something which never come in the life of the husband, and it is the mother who looks after her children in such a way. And not only during these three phases, but later on as well. She is an embodiment of selflessness. She is an embodiment of self-sacrifice. She sleeps while her children, she doesn't sleep even if their children are in any sort of bother. If their children have to sleep, then she has to remain awake the whole night. At times she sacrifices her basic needs for their well-being. She gives them time, she gives them compassion, and she is the only relationship which does not expect any good from her children, even in any sorts. For example, if the children are disobedient to her, if they are rude to her, if they are harsh to her, even then you find the love of the mother gushing forth like a fountain, and it's like a cool breeze which embraces their children, her children, and never expects for any reward from her children. The worst type of children, even they receive these prayers and this warmth of compassion from their mother. So such is the extent the mother has. And children, of course, cannot repay their mothers in any way, not even their fathers, but it is a matter of supreme importance that When they grow up, they try as much as possible to look after them, to look after their needs, especially their emotional needs and needs which relate to a lot of things which are unsaid and understood. And we must realize that parents always say something when it is really getting out of their hands. Otherwise, they don't express even their very wanting needs. So we have to be attentive to them. We have to be very compassionate and sympathetic to them. And we must remember what the Quran has taught us in this regard whilst praying for our parents. And it says, "Rabbir hamhuma kama rabbayani saghira," that, oh God, have mercy on them the way they had mercy on me when I was growing up, and they showed mercy to me. So we have to reciprocate this, and this is an unwritten bond between the child and his parents. And of course, the father himself has his own importance in the life of the children, and the way that he behaves and the way he conducts himself has also entails that the children be very soft and very gentle to them. Of course, this does not mean that the parents have a right to enforce their decisions on their children in any way. This is, of course, unwarranted. They must present their opinion the way they want to, but ultimately, grown-up children have their own say in their own matters. However, if children have to differ, if grown-up children have to differ from their husband, from their parents, then it has to be in a very congenial, very amiable way, in which there is no rudeness or harshness involved. Viewers, let's now go on to the next part of our study circle, and this is the Bible verse of the day. It has been taken from the Gospel of Saint Mark. This is chapter 12 and verses 41 to 44. I have entitled it, "Spend Even If You Have Little." This is perhaps what the gist of the paragraph, which I'm just going to read out to you, is. It says, "And he, Jesus, took a seat by the place where the money was kept, and saw how the people put money into the boxes, and a number who had wealth put in much. And there came a poor widow, and she put in 2 little bits of money, which make a farthing." Farthing is, of course, a currency, or it's a count of the currency of his time. So she put in very few, couple of bits of coins that she had. And look what Jesus did. "And Jesus made his disciples come to him and said to them, 'Truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are putting money into the box, because they all put in something out of what they had no need for, but she out of her need put it in all she had, even all her living.'" So this is something which is so, it's so out of this world, that a widow in the time of Jesus came to her, and when we had appealed for some for those who needed, and she, in spite of being in want, and she, in spite of the fact she had very little money, she gave whatever she had without showing the fact or without expressing her own favor on the other person. And this is how Jesus taught his disciples. He said that people who have a lot of money and a lot of money to spare, of course, if they give this in charity, this amount, it is something which is quite normal, because when you have spare money, and if you have heaps of spare money, it's easy to spend it in the way of God. But look at this widow, that she had a very little amount, but she never shied away. And in fact, she might have needed that little amount, but she came forward and presented whatever she had. And this, in fact, is a very beautiful appeal to us as fellow beings of our human fraternity, that when we see people around us in bother, when we see people around us in some sort of pain or distress, instead of shying away from perhaps a little amount that we may have, we as individuals are being tested for what we have. So we must not shy away if we have a small amount to give. And at times we might not have anything to give. Then a couple of words of good wish to the other person, maybe calling some other friend so that he or she can help out the person in distress if our pockets are not able to do so. And so there are so many things that you can still do. So the bottom line, as pointed out by Jesus here, is that we must not shy away if we have a small amount of money to spend in the way of God. And also, if that money is needed by us, it is something which is so cherished by the Almighty, because something that we barely had, we did not withhold it from spending it on others. In the Quran too, we have been told very effectively in Surah Hashr that the highest form of spending is when a person spends on others even if he or she is needing that money. The Quranic words are وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ, that believers are those who give preference to the needs of others even if they themselves are in need. And subhanAllah, this is something which we need to be so careful about. And I've seen so many people tell me the fact that that this is something which makes us experience God at times. When we spend on others, so many people have actually shared their experiences that when our own need arises, somehow from somewhere we get our money back manyfold in some form that we had never even imagined. And although we cannot see God, we cannot hear God, but this is one way in which we can experience Him when He fulfills our needs as a result of we fulfilling the needs of others at a very lower level. So if we have to experience God, this is something which is worth trying out, to spend on others, to look after others, to go that extra mile to help others and wait for the Almighty's mercy. Because now we move on to the next part of our study circle, and this is the last one. And the discussion topic that I have before me is the advantages and disadvantages of social media. So, of course, this is something which we all know is plaguing our younger generation. We know that there are people who are glued to their screens, to their tablets, to their cell phones, to their phone books and everything, and they actually sit day in and day out on the social media. And of course there are several forms of entertainment, both good and bad, and of course then there is this situation in which excesses are also committed, in which we indulge in pleasantries which take us to some extremes. So no one would doubt the fact, and no one would perhaps argue with the fact that we have to be temperate in our approach to everything in life. Moderation is the key, balance is the key. So whether it's social media or Facebook or anything, or it's sports, or it's any other activity in which we indulge a lot, this of course must occur or has to occur or does occur at the expense of many other responsibilities that we have. So of course we need to understand and transfer this understanding to our next generation, that one of the primary reasons of we being in this world and becoming contributing individuals is to become those people who are responsible to other people, who are responsible for a lot of things. And one cannot be a responsible person, one cannot be a dependable person unless and until he or she leads a relatively balanced and moderate life. If there are extremes, if there are indulgences to one extent, then of course our needs are compromised, our responsibilities are compromised, many moral obligations are compromised. So what we need to understand here is that life offers its opportunity just once only, and we have to make the best out of that opportunity. That can only be done if we really use our time in a very efficient way, in a way which is advantageous to us, in a way which is beneficial to the society in which we live in. Otherwise, of course, if we waste time, we have this very strong chance of being wasted by time. So to be moderate, to spend time in a way that is really beneficial is something which we should really plan. And we must also see that social media has a lot of benefits. The communication extent, the amount of people that you can reach out for your own message is huge. It's simply unbelievable, and you can connect to people. There are so many movements which have been actually they have been instituted, and they are going on simply because of there's a very large following on Facebook of certain people. So it has become very easy, and people have become very accessible. The world has become very accessible. So the advantages of social media just cannot be denied. However, when anything, including social media, gets the better of our moral responsibilities, makes us go to certain extremes, makes us forget our primary responsibilities, only then that it comes into question But let me also point this out that as parents, we have to be very prudent in pointing out or in handling our children who are deeply involved in sitting before the social media and indulging in all sorts of browsing for hours and hours, because this is something which is a very sensitive issue these days, and any mishandling by the parents is going to be counterproductive, because something which is available everywhere, if you try to stop it at your homes, you'll not be able to do so because it's available at other instances. After all, they go to schools, they go to their friends, and hence something which is readily available, the right way to control it is not to stop it, but to regulate it and to actually make individuals spend their energy, their vast reserves of energy. The young ones have vast reserves of energy, to divert that energy into constructive activities, into other activities which really attract our younger lot. And for this, as parents, we have to think a lot. And instead of just obstructing or just giving this this command of stop this or stop that, that's not going to work. And that's also not a very polite way to make things work. We have to give alternatives which are very strong, or at least as equal in their strength and attraction to the social media. And I'm sure there are so many constructive activities. I can still see, and I can see parents today realizing this fact and diverting the attention of their children in a positive way towards other activities. But remember, any harshness or any strict discipline in this matter can be very counterproductive. It has to be in a very careful way, in a very wise way, and in a way that it actually is not counterproductive. So with these words, we come to an end to this study session, and hopefully, inshallah, next week we'll continue with our study. And until then, it is Khuda Hafiz.